Good afternoon and welcome to the very fourth episode in our series on the smallest useful RAG app in Azure and how to build it. In this final episode, what we're going to do is we're going to take all of the things that we have talked about over the last few episodes and put them all together. We are going to be querying our documents that live up in a search index in Azure. We are then going to be taking those documents that are relevant to our question and we are going to be giving them to the large language model that we have specified and using that to answer the actual questions that our users have. And we are then finally, as you can see right here, going to wrap up the answers into a little web app that you can then display on your machine. And you will be able to ask questions like, what color is the first time user tote? And it will then return you correct answers. As ever, my name is MLG. I'm a principal engineer at Oakland, and we are a data consultancy and an AI consultancy in the north of England. And what I am aiming to do with this series is give you all of the components that will allow you to understand all of the different moving parts that go into building a RAG app. So, with the knowledge that the first time user tote is orange, it's reserved for first time borrowers, let's get into the actual code and what we are going to do. All of this is available in my GitHub repo for free. All of this is public. You can follow along. And the way that this repo works is that there are 4 branches for the 4 different episodes that we have had. And we are today in branch 4, interrogation and chat. So with no further ado, let's zoom in and get on with it. This is a reasonably simple episode, and it follows the flowchart that we covered in part 1 of this series. What we are going to be doing is we are going to be taking the question that our user asks, and we are then going to give it to our Azure AI index. And what that will then do is use a hybrid search, which we covered last time, to get back the most relevant pieces of documentation for that search. With those relevant pieces of documentation, we are then going to go to our large language model, give it those things, and say, please, 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 can you construct us an answer? And in order to be able to show that, you can follow through on the part 4 piece of documentation. So there is a script called ask.py, and that asks one question and then it exits. And we can use that to demonstrate how all of this works. So if we take the question that we just asked, which tote, is reserved for first-time borrowers, and we invoke ask.py with that, and using an argument of top k is 3. So remember, top k from last time is how many pieces of documentation do you want to use to answer this question. We can do this thing, and it hands it off to our search index, which is smallest useful RAG, and then it gives us the retrieval mode, which is hybrid, and the chat deployment, which we are using, which is GPT 4.1 mini, and it gives us the answer. It tells us the question here, the pieces of documentation that are used for it, and then our actual answer, which is just here underneath. It is worth, though, going in and looking at the actual code. So if we find scripts ask.py, we can actually see what's going on. The main thing that's happening is that we are invoking our chat implementation and our chat model, firstly with this system prompt. So you answer questions using only the provided context chunks. Here are the rules. If you don't know what the answer is, then you should say unknown answer. And this unknown answer here is parameterized as I don't know based on the provided documents. With that as the system prompt for our chat invocation, what we then do after passing the arguments is, of course, loading the config. So loading up the model, accessing it, authenticating ourselves onto it, and that kind of garbage, is that we then pass everything out. And we build up the prompt that we are going to do. So we pass in the question. So in the case of that we just asked, it would be, what is the color of the tote for first-time users? And then we give the context, which is these things here. The context, which is the pieces of the chunks of documentation that are going to be used to actually answer the question. So we are constructing for ourselves a RAG flow. And if you use something like Azure AI Foundry, this is built in for you. This is the kind of thing that if you apply a knowledge source on Azure AI Foundry, or if you take a SharePoint folder and you authenticate it onto Copilot and use it from there. This is the kind of thing that's happening for you behind the scenes, but I think it's educative to see it being actually constructed. We then go ahead and we answer the question by doing this. We build up a chat configuration using the OpenAI SDK format, because that appears to be becoming the industry standard. And then we have the system prompt that we put in and the user prompt that we get from build user prompt, which has the question in it and the results. And this then gives you the answer that you need. You get down here eventually to print, answer, and results. All of this stuff here is how we output the different things that you saw in your terminal, these things here. What we can do is go one further and create a web app. The code for that web app is here in app main.py, and this is an extremely small Streamlit UI for asking grounded questions over index documents. You will do better than this. You will extend this for yourself in a good and meaningful way. Or there are lots and lots of templates online that you can just like go and get. Microsoft do a really good job of making lots of different templates that you can just fork from GitHub or clone from GitHub and use for yourself. Every bugger has written themselves like a template chat app over the last 3 years. So there are lots and lots to go at. I just picked Streamlit because I'm just comfortable with it. You can then go ahead and look at this to understand what's going on. We have to write all of the things again. So we have to give it the system prompt that we know and love from ask.py. And then most of the same things that we had inside the simple ask.py script are replicated in the actual web app, though there is some extra stuff that just adds a quality of life on top. So if you don't have Streamlit installed, then there's like a placeholder that goes, hey, you don't have Streamlit installed. You need to do like pip install and actually get the right libraries that you need. We create an ask config, we normalize things, but crucially as well, what we do is we have a history, which I can show you if we go ahead now and run the actual web app. So let me clear my terminal so that you can actually see what's going on. And if I run the actual web app here, you can see that we have this notion of history and this notion of memory. And all you are doing when you provide an AI chat with memory is that you are extending the conversation, which is what's happening here inside the format of the history, where you append the lines of chat onto each other. Because remember, large language models are just really good algorithms for predicting the next piece of text. And when you predict the next piece of text in a conversation, you want to be shown the history inside that conversation in order to be able to like run all the way down it and then predict what comes next. That is, at a basic level, effectively what happens when you have a conversation with a large language model and it maintains continuity from one chat to the next. It's not, quote unquote, remembering, because large language models are stateless machines. They just take an input and produce an output. It's on you, the user, or sorry, the developer, to actually maintain that state. You have to keep the model up to scratch with where it is in the conversation, which is what we're doing when we are appending lines to each part of that conversation. We're saying, you said this, then we said this, you said this, then we said this, we've just said this, so what's the next response? And that is what is happening inside this web app when we say that we have memory turns of 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever it happens to be. What this is saying is, how many turns of conversation do you want me to actually go ahead and remember in our memory object? Because there will be some limit, right? There's a limit to if you are writing a web app that contains memory that has to hold in its RAM the state of a conversation. There's a limit to how long that can get because you only have so much RAM before the whole thing falls over. But secondarily, there's a limit to how many tokens the large language model can actually deal with anyway. You might get to a point where you have a conversation that is so long that you start to get out of tokens, like the request that you make. There are just too many tokens in it for the large language model to be able to maintain in context at once. And so you have to quite thoughtfully handle what is going on. Having said that, let's just demonstrate memory actually working, and then we can wrap up what we've learned and understand where we go next. So let's get out that thing about the orange tote again. So what color is the tote for first time users? And if we do this, It's going to run down to the bottom once it gets a result. So you'll see that it does something in the formatting by default, which I don't really like, which is to run all the way to the end of all of the references in the conversation. I don't really like that, but you can change that behavior in Streamlit. I just haven't done it yet because that's not part of this little tutorial course that we've got going on. So the tote for the first time users is orange. It's reserved specifically for first time borrowers, and we can demonstrate to ourselves that memory is working by saying something like, "What did you just say?" ? And one of the things that's going to happen here, which we could defend against and we could deal with if we had a more sophisticated app, is that you can see it's actually done some chunk retrieval. It has done a query on the AI index, even though it didn't have to, because we asked a question about the previous turn in the conversation. If we were going to production, this is something we would fix. We don't want to just be like endlessly hammering our Azure AI Search endpoint, even though they're really quite resilient, even though they're really quite durable. We don't just want to like endlessly hammer it, because that it could just result in a situation where we have too many requests on one resource and it just all starts to fall over from there. So we would like some kind of logic in it where it could figure out, do I actually need to make a search here or not? And that would be a really good thing to have as a first step towards productionization. Speaking of productionization, let's talk about the limitations of what we've built together. It's important to say that this isn't bad. This is okay. This is an okay first step to getting down the road to understanding RAG, to understanding Retrieval-Augmented Generation, and knowing all of the main core moving parts. But there are a whole bunch of things we've done that would be obviously unacceptable in a production environment. For a start, we have no testing. Right? We have no testing at all. We don't have even unit testing on our web app to make sure that it is okay. And we really, really would need that as a pre-deployment check in any DevOps pipelines that we wrote if we were deploying this into production. We also don't have any kind of testing on the output of the large language model. We have no assurance that it's actually answering our users in a cogent way. Now, there are a number of different ways that you can evaluate whether or not an agent or whether or not a RAG pipeline is doing well. There are frameworks like Deep Eval, and honestly, I think they're worth a look. I think there's a bit of a mini series or an episode that we could do on this channel about the different kinds of evaluation you can do over artificial intelligence agents. And so we'll look at that next time, but none of that is done, and so this isn't production ready. Equally, we're not using RBAC, we're using keys. You shouldn't be using keys in a production environment unless you really, 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 really have to, because it's nice not to be using API keys because they can be stolen and then people can get your services for free. All that garbage that you just don't want to deal with. You should be using RBAC instead. Like I say though, this does give you a good starting point, and I hope that you have been following along in this series. I would love you to comment down below if you have been, because I really like making this kind of content. I really enjoy building things like this so that I can teach the bare bones and teach the moving parts to people. If you find this kind of content good, I would like you to comment down below and ask for more of it, because quite frankly, I, MLG, have to go to Oakland, the people who own this channel, and say, can I have a little bit more time, please, to make my little tutorials on artificial intelligence? I will make you some other things on the side, but I would like to make you some tutorials. And so comment down below, please, if that is your bag. Other than that, there will be more episodes. We will talk about large language model evaluations. That seems like a brilliant idea. And we are also going to get back into data platforms and how artificial intelligence integrates itself into those data platforms. For now, though, I have been MLG, a principal engineer at Oakland. We are a data consultancy in the north of England. It has been a delight and a pleasure to have you along for this 4-episode series on RAG in Azure, and I shall see you next time.